Welcome to the Default Profitable Podcast. You're listening to this week's episode, and today we're going to focus on starting a small business and what it takes to grow it. And we'll hear some successes, some failures, and some lessons from our guest. I'm your host, Matt Nettleton, and today my guest is Lesley Crane. Lesley, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me.
No problem. Happy to do it. Well, why don't we do this? You and I talked briefly before we did this, but why don't you take 2 or 3 minutes, introduce yourself and your business to the people that are listening.
Sure. So as I just said, my name is Lesley Crane. I'm the CEO and co-founder of a company called DiversiFind. DiversiFind is a B2B SaaS platform that allows diverse-owned companies to market themselves to companies that are looking to diversify their spend.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in real terms, what do you do day to day?
Yeah. Great question. So we are a true technology startup. So no 2 days are exactly the same. But we are actually today launching our 2.0 version. So the first year that we existed, we were, kind of tweaking our MVP. And now that is, out in the world, and we spent a lot of time talking to diverse suppliers. And when we talk about diverse suppliers, we're talking about traditionally underrepresented groups. So women, minority, veteran-owned companies, companies owned by LGBTQIA plus folks, disability-owned companies, anybody that's, kind of not in the majority. And companies are looking to spend money with those companies. The city, the state has goals then to spend money with those companies, and they are subcontractors to those primes. And what we run into is a lot of times folks are struggling to efficiently find those companies, and those diverse-owned companies are often, not always, but often small. And they don't have a marketing company or a business development person. And so we developed our platform to help them market themselves, to be a one-stop shop place for companies to go and find those companies, and to make it easier for diverse-owned companies to tell the world, like, this is what I do, these are my capabilities, and to help them scale and grow.
Okay. So you started the business a year ago?
So we've existed since 2022, but we spent most of 2022 building our MVP, and then we launched our MVP in 23, and then that's been out in the world since January of 23, or early 23, I guess.
All right. So what led you to start the business?
So before I was in the entrepreneurial world, I spent most of my career in government. So I'm a lawyer, and I did spend some time in private legal practice, but most of my career has been in government. And my last kind of position in government was running the Indiana Department of Administration. In that role, one of my responsibilities was helping administer the Division of Supplier Diversity. And so in doing that, I kind of got to see firsthand the ups and downs of diverse suppliers trying to get work either through the state or with companies that are doing work with the state, them getting certified, once they're on a contract, getting used. And all of that kind of inspired me, my co-founder, and some other folks to really figure out, how can we make this easier, a little bit cheaper, more streamlined. But they're just, I have a heart that beats for that agency, because those folks are really hard workers, and they do, thankless work all day long, but they don't have enough resources. They don't have enough people. And really, there's never enough support for supplier diversity. I mean, most people have never even heard of it, honestly. So we just kind of kept thinking, like, there has to be a better way to support these small companies that want to scale, grow, increase their economic opportunities. And so that's kind of where it came from.
So there's like two ends of the spectrum that people start at. One end is they look at the marketplace and they go, man, I can make some money over there. Mm-hmm. And the other is they look at the marketplace and they go, well, this is really interesting and I care about this. I'm going to start it. Yeah. Which end of the spectrum were you on
The second one, I mean, this was something we really cared about, and we are we're a woman-owned company, so like we saw what we view as a problem, right? Supporting these diverse suppliers from the government side. Then we opened our own company, and we were on the diverse supplier side because we got certified, and we started doing some consulting work, and that's sort of where we saw the struggle firsthand, because we were trying to do consulting work for diverse suppliers, and we were like, this is too cumbersome because it's hard to find. Most of these smaller companies can't afford to hire somebody. And that just seemed like there just had to be something better. Like there had to be economies of scale to bring to this problem, because we know companies, entities, not always companies, right? Because it could be not-for-profits, it could be universities, there are all kinds of folks that are looking for diverse suppliers. There had to be a better way to do this. There's definitely still a need for like bespoke consulting services, but there had to be a better way to kind of gather all these folks and put them in one place. And so I think we sort of lived it. And of course, I don't think you can do this kind of work and not have a passion for the diverse suppliers because these are folks who are, I mean, they're hacking it out every single day, whether they're, a chef or a concrete pourer or a roofing company, whatever they're doing. I mean, and they are just trying to build their business. And they're a subject matter expert. They're not a marketing company. They're not an expert in how to navigate government bureaucracy, if that's what they're trying to do. If they want to interface with city government or state government, they're not an expert in how to do business with, big guys like Lilly or Cummins or whoever. So there is a real need to pull these folks together and help them figure out how to do it bigger and better if that's what they want to do. And so that's what we're trying to do, is pull them all together, help them get found, and then also help them pool together the opportunities that exist, because there are a ton of them. It's just, can we help them find those opportunities in an efficient way?
So 2 years in, right, or going on to version 2.0 of your product,
right. Mm-hmm.
What do you wish you had known back in 2022 when you started?
Oh man, that's a really tough one. I wish I had known everything takes longer, than you think it will. Because you always want it yesterday. People always ask you, when do you need this? And I always think, man, I needed it 6 months ago, but I want it now. So, yeah, everything takes longer. Everything costs more than you think it will cost. And I think I didn't know how much support there is for people. I have, in particular, one person who has been so wonderful to me. I can call him anytime with any question. And I try to always, express gratitude to him for his availability to me and the depth of knowledge he's always willing to give to me. And he always says, people helped me. So he's very humble about it and very kind. And I hope that expertise is available to others who are willing to ask. But I think there's more of that out there than people realize.
Well, I think, and one of the things that I know from my 30 years of being around business owners is that the most successful business owners are the most likely to share.
Mm-hmm. I think that's right.
So
yeah.
And I think the most successful startups and younger companies are the people that are willing to ask.
I will say, somebody said to me once, confident people ask questions. And I try to remember that when I have what I feel like is a dumb question, but I think to myself, or I try to, I'm not dumb. It's just something I don't know. And it's okay not to know. I know lots of stuff. I just don't happen to know this thing. And if I don't ask, I'm not going to know. So,
You may never. So you're working for the government. You're in the diversity administration, supply. You see all this stuff happening. It's a big risk to leave a government job and start your own thing. What was it that drove you to do that?
I don't know. I don't know is the answer to that. The short answer. I think, my business partner and I always said to each other, we could still be just cashing those government checks every 2 weeks. It's it certainly was a risk. I think in our gut, we knew that there's just really a need. There's just really, really a need. And I can say that in every conversation, we've had so many over these years, right? Whether it's investors or diverse suppliers or corporate, potential corporate partners and clients and things, I've never had anybody say, "What are you doing? Like, this is so dumb." Everyone is like, "Oh my gosh, this is a real need." And we've talked to people like at SBDC or, IEDC or wherever. I mean, people definitely see a need for it. So I think that desire to leap was validated, by all of these different conversations we've had over time. So I think it's probably just trusting that voice inside our heads that said, this is a thing. I mean, it's really a thing.
So when and I'm just going to throw this out there because most of the people that I talk to, they don't intellectually feel like they need to do this. It's like an emotional gut thing. Like they couldn't be happy if they weren't doing this.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that describes you.
I think, yes, I think that's right. And it feels the same person I was talking to about a minute ago, who is always so kind with his advice and counsel. There is an absolute ROI based case for diverse supplier programs, things like that. And when I talk with him about it, he's always like, "Don't ever say it's the right thing to do." Which I'm like, "But it is." And he's like, "Right, don't say that." So I think for me, it absolutely is, because of all of the reasons you can, I'm sure, fill in for yourself. Having said that, there's all kinds of data that shows that spending, and I shared with you in the email I sent you this morning, one of those resources, and it says, like, one of the data points in there is if you create a supplier diversity program, you can save your entity 8.5% year over year. That's a big savings. And that's just overall. And I think one of the reasons we cite that statistic is people will say, well, diverse suppliers cost more. Well, it might be true. The marketing company, for example, like this one might come in more, but globally, spending your money in a diverse way costs less overall. And the other data point we like to share is that when you spend your money with diverse suppliers in a diverse way, those diverse suppliers come back to your entity as customers and clients. So it is an ROI based. So while for me, back to your original question, for me, it is, yes, very much a gut thing. It's an emotional thing. And this goes back to sort of my political, because I spent that whole career of mine in politics. It very much is a financial decision. It's a fiscal, conservative based thing, and it is ROI driven for whoever. But underpinning it all for me is that it is the right thing to do. And you're helping all of these companies grow and scale to whatever size is right for them. So I guess this is a very long-winded answer to your very simple question, but it is, I can pick and choose the reason based on the audience I'm talking to. So if I'm talking to someone who's very close to me and I can say whatever I want, I think it's the right thing to do. If I'm talking to someone who's maybe inclined to not love supplier diversity, I can talk with them about the ROI of the thing. So I have the luxury, I guess, of being able to choose.
Well, I think you've got to be able to tell the story that the person you're talking to will respond to.
Correct. But yes, to your point though, for me, it's the right thing to do, and I get to help whatever business it is grow to whatever size they want if they're willing to engage with me and talk about, whatever they want to do.
That it's interesting. So one of the things that I do tend to ask in these interviews is whether or not somebody has passion about what they're doing. And a lot of times, it starts off that they don't have passion. They want to make money, mm-hmm. and they end up being more passionate about their people than the business that they happen to be in, which is a kind of a switch.
That's interesting.
And it sounds like for you, you've really got the passion, and the other stuff is catching up.
Yes, I would agree with that. I think I would have a hard time just being in a business where, I mean, I want to make money. Everybody does. I'm a people first kind of person.
So let's pretend some other government functionary comes to you and says, hey, listen, I'm thinking about jumping out and starting this on my own. What advice would you give them?
I think I would tell them, I would give them some thoughts about setting themselves up for sort of long-term success with respect to fiscal goals that I didn't have in place when we started. Making goals like sort of chunked out, just ways I didn't think about things. I would, set that up. I would give them advice about finding a person, like we've already talked about. I would talk a lot about access to capital. And it would depend on if I was talking to a man or a woman. Because as I'm sure you are aware, access to capital for women in particular, and especially women of color, is much more challenging than it is for men. So it's less than, for example, it is less than 2% of venture capital that goes to women. And so if someone is starting something like I am in the tech universe, if it's just a traditional, we're just starting a company, it's like consulting or something, it's a little bit different. But if it's like a tech startup and they're looking for, venture capital, they're going to have to get real clear about how capital is going to flow to them at the beginning, because it's so much harder. And that's not to say don't do it. It's just to say be very realistic about the flow of money into your business, especially at the beginning.
One of the things that I spend a lot of time talking to startup clients about is that if the only reason that you need an investor is for money, you're probably getting the wrong investor. Because you should be able to, even if you have just a minimum viable product, you should be able to generate some cash flow. And as soon as you bring an investor in, you lose control. You either lose control of the company or you at the very least lose control of the cash flow. Because the investor is always like, hey, listen, I'm happy to invest. I expect a return.
Sure.
And so they are going to put controls on you.
Mm-hmm.
And so if all you need is cash, well, and you've already got some cash flow, you can just sell more.
Sure.
Unless the investor can come to you and say, listen, I've got a little cash. By the way, here's some things I can help you with.
Agreed.
And then they start to really help you grow the company.
Agreed. Well, and you're probably much more aware of all this even than I am. But with access to that type of capital anymore, you have to be generating revenue. Like you almost can't speak to someone if you're not. Investors will say, like, we're early stage, you should be bringing in $100,000 a year. And you're like, I'm early stage. Like, what does early stage mean to you anyway?
Well, so the funny thing about the podcast is the name Default Profitable comes from interviews I've done with early stage seed type companies. And I'm like, so give me your business plan. And they're like, well, we're going to get an investor. We're going to lose all their money. Then we're going to get a bigger investor. We're going to lose all their money. By the time we lose our third investor's money, we're going to sell the company. Everybody's going to be rich. And I'm like, no,
my God.
Slow down. You need to have something that you can generate revenue with.
That is nuts.
And then you need to learn how to generate more revenue by improving your something or improving your processes around something.
That's nuts to me.
And it sounds nuts, but for a lot of people, they don't have the business fundamentals.
I can't believe anybody would even talk to them.
Well, they struggle and they can't figure out why.
And I got to tell you, I've sat through investor meetings where I've gotten the question, like, what's your long-term plan for investors? And I have said, and I've often wondered if this answer is wrong. I got to be honest with you, I want to sell as little of my company as I have to. Like, if I didn't have to, like, you seem like a lovely person, but if I didn't have to talk to you, I wouldn't. I mean, and I can't, and I've said to advisors and different people, like, I don't know if that's the wrong answer and they've said, well, it's just the answer. It's true. It's the right answer, which it is, because I don't want to sell more than I have to. But I mean, yikes, to just say baldly, I plan to take this money from you, F it up, take more money, F it up.
Well, they didn't say ev it up. They just said lose it. Right. So they can take that money and they can spend it all without generating enough cash.
Yeah.
But at some point, that's a terrible business plan.
Sure.
And in the tech world, you can pretend that it's a good business plan because it works a little bit different. But if you're a plumber or an electrician, right, there's not a whole bunch of investors standing around saying, "Hey, we'll help you scale."
Right.
Like you have to generate revenue.
Right.
And I love tech and I do a lot of business with tech companies, but tech is not a large part of the economy.
No.
It is enabling a large part of the economy.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
that's interesting.
All right. So let's pretend you go back to day one. So 2024 Lesley gets to sit and, have a beer, have a glass of wine next to 2022 Lesley the night before you open. And you say, hey, listen, just so you know, everything works out. We're fine.
Yeah.
However, here's the first thing you need to concentrate on. Do this first. Focus on this. What do you tell?
Ooh. We went through a couple of developers, and I think if I could get to the developer we have now faster, I would. But having said that, I learned a lot. It's hard to know. Things work out like they're supposed to. I don't know. I just feel like the path we're on is probably, even though it's slower than I wanted and all the things, it's probably the right path. So it was a little rockier than I intended, and it's not as fast as I hoped. But I think, I can't exchange those things for the learning experience that I've had. So I guess I probably just need to go back and tell myself to calm down. Probably.
Not the worst message ever.
Yeah, that's probably right.
All right. Well, that's probably a pretty good place to wrap up. Just tell myself to calm down. It is going to take longer. It is going to cost more than I expect, but it is what it is.
What it is.
So, all right. I'm going to remind listeners as you hear these podcasts, there's 3 ways you can help us. The 1 is you can share it. 2 is you can subscribe to it. And 3 is you can leave us a review. If you're interested in learning more about Lesley, you can go online at defaultprofitable.com. There'll be links and information in the show notes. And thank you for being a guest.
Thank you for having me.
I appreciate it. To our listeners, we'll be back next week with another episode of Default Profitable. Until then, stay focused, keep working, stay profitable.